Hi there. I want to show you some of the new capabilities regarding settings in Web Essentials for Visual Studio 2012. So previously, in earlier versions of Web Essentials, all the settings were global. But now you can have settings that are specific to the project. So basically, what we can do now is that we can override any settings, any global settings, um, from individual projects. So this is really helpful if you have certain projects that need specific settings that are different than your other projects, or if you're in a team environment and you want to make sure that all team members adhere to the same settings. So let's begin with the beginning here and look at um, some of the new stuff here in the way we store settings. So previously, all settings were stored in the registry, but now the settings are stored in your user folder in a subfolder called Web Essentials, and it's this WE settings.xml. And if we open it, we can see it's just an XML file with all the settings for Web Essentials. And these are your global settings. So if you do not have any project-specific settings, these are the ones that determine the settings. So let's just open a project here. And I have a web forms project. It could be any project. And it's now open, and we're using the global settings here. So in order for me to um, use project settings, I have to add a file to my project. And I can do that by right-clicking the project node and select Create Project Settings. And by doing that, a new file is added to the project called wesettings.xml. So this is pretty familiar because what it actually is, it's a copy of this file right here. It's a copy of the global settings. So now that you have this file, you can make changes to all these settings here and they apply only to your project. So it's a naming convention. A file that's called wesettings.xml has to live in the root of your project. If a file does that, then that means that it overrides the global settings. And we can still use all um, the same. Let's see here. If we go to Tools Options and find Web Essentials down here, if I make a change to any property here, let's just change this one. Enable mustache. We can see down in the status bar that Web Essentials tells us that the project settings are saved. That means this file is saved. So you always know whether or not you're updating global settings or project settings because Web Essentials tells you in the status bar. And if we take a look, we can see here that our setting actually came through and enable mustache is set to true. Now we can also just change it directly in this file. So let me just click Save. And you can see down here it says again, project settings saved. So that way we can override the global settings very, very easily, and I can check in this file to my source control and let my other team members share the same settings that way. Um, if I delete this file, we can see down here that the global settings are applied. We're no longer using um, the project settings. So if I go back to my tools options here, we can see that the setting is now back here to false. I changed it manually in my XML document before on the project settings, but here we can see that it's still false from the global settings from before. And if I change this property and click OK, we can see here Web Essentials tells us that global settings are saved. The global settings, right? Because I do not have any project file over here. And in the minute that I do that, we go back and we can see here, let's go up here, So let's set the mustache thing setting here again to false, and if I go back, we can see that it's now mirrored in the options. And let's set it to true. We go back, and we can see that it's now true. So using this XML file in the root of your project, whether or not it's included in your project or not, as long as it's on disk in the same folder as your project, and it has to be in the root of your project, that means that the project settings now overrides any global settings.